Okay. Hope springs eternal for the Republicans in the midterms. We have Harry Anton, my favorite New York Jew, with his CNN analysis. Let me refresh this so the video works. It was on a loop. It was stuck. Let's see what Harry has to say today, which is very interesting. Now, I saw somebody, before I go on this, somebody in the chat wrote, polls are fake. As I was watching the last doing the last segment. You're right. Polls can be fake, and they can be used as narratives, and they can be used to control narratives, and they can be used to discourage and psyop you. Absolutely true. Polls can be fake, 100%. And you should never, ever trust a poll completely on its own. That is a fact. But there's a big but in this. Polls do tell us trends, and those trends are not fake. Because as much as they want to completely rig the polls, they stay within a framework of their lies. And so when polls are all trending in a certain direction, that is something you can trust. And trust me, I've been doing this for 25 years. Politics, I've been a junkie since I was a teenager and watching this stuff. And the trends are always telling the truth. And what I mean by a trend is when multiple polls start showing direction in one way. That is something you can always trust, is a trend. All right. So, having said that, let's watch what Harry has to say.
Take a look. GOP would win the Senate with this map. Let's say Republicans only hold on to the states that Trump won by greater than 10 points. That would, in fact, give them the Senate 51-49. Why? Because what you would see that the Democrats would flip North Carolina, they would flip Maine, but Republicans would hold on to Ohio, they'd hold on to Texas, and they'd hold on to Alaska because Donald Trump won all of those states by greater than 10 points. And I will note, John and I were talking, we have the NCAA tournament going on. This is sort of the chalk scenario going on where the most obvious events actually do occur. Because take a look, during the Trump era, look at this, flip the Senate seat, midterm and presidential years. States the other party won by 10 plus points in the last presidential election. 0 times did a party flip those states. So we're talking about places like Texas, Alaska, Ohio, where Trump won by double digits. Which is why, take a look.
All right, that's what matters the most right there, is that a state hasn't been flipped that was a 10 plus for a candidate in a long time. I don't know the exact, he doesn't put the year on there. Or he does. Okay, since 2016. So this is a 10-year trend, and it's very unlikely to break. The Democrats would have to have a massive blue wave to do that, and that's just not going to happen because let's keep looking here. Rasmussen right now is, out of all the pollsters, the most accurate. They were most accurate for the election, and they're the most accurate in catching trends because they keep polling every day. They have a daily tracker, and then it comes in at the end of the week on a rolling average. So it's the most accurate you can see. And Trump is now back up to 47% here. But that's not all. Morning Consult, which is a super liberal poll, super leftist poll that always trends left. You should see whether they had Kamala Harris, how high they had her up. They have Trump up the highest since January. So the trend, this is going to shock a lot of people because the influencers don't agree with this, but the trend is that the Iran war, people like what Trump's doing with the Iranian war. You want to know it by the press. You want to know it by the media. You want to know it by the influencers. But the truth is that in the war, people like how Trump's handling it. He is getting more popular as the war goes on. And that is not something anybody is telling you. But this, and now take this into account, that Trump now is hitting the highest numbers since early in the year. Remember when he was riding high off Venezuela? Yeah, that was the high point this year. Riding high off that, it's gone up. The trend is up. Now imagine he gets a big win in Iran. Imagine after that, gas prices plummet. Imagine after that, the economy hits a boom. it's not hard to imagine the Republicans winning the midterms in that scenario. And that's a very plausible scenario. Let's go forward more. Here's a tip poll. Support for the military action against Iran remains in the green, which is pretty massive. And then you have Seth Keshel, who, in my opinion, is the best election expert out there. Some sanity for you panicking. Look at the R number. It's a plus. He's talking about registrations. Both sides are busy registering voters. Dems have more enthusiasm, giving standard midterm dynamics. Blue-collar bellwethers in Pennsylvania to the right of where they were even 2 months ago. This trend will stabilize or reverse right after primaries or after midterms. Right now, concentrated drives in urban areas outweigh the slow and steady trickle taking place over 16 years of Dem die-off. So in other words, the Democrats have gained, but only slightly. Republican registrations are up across the board. Now, registrations are not fake. Ever. That's hard data. No, I guess you could say it's fake if it's like auto registration. But when they're trending in a certain direction, they tell you a lot. So, guys, we are looking at Trump pulling off one of the biggest, I think, election / presidential term miracles we've ever seen, which would be a president that is highly polarized and greatly unpopular to one side, who struggles mightily to get over 50% because the left is so against him and because the middle is so mushy middle that they're just never happy about anything anymore, no matter how the country is going. You have a president in that situation pulling off more than any president dared attempt in 15 months. And by the end of this year, it'll have been almost 2 years. Pulling all this off. Doing skirmishes in other countries, quick skirmishes, getting us into a war, not a long war, but a war against one of the three big bads in the world, remaking our financial system. All this stuff that most presidents wouldn't dare touch because it's unpopular. And in all of that, he's holding steady in his support. That's a miracle. And if he pulls off the midterms, it'll just continue the legend of what's happening in this term. It's incredible what we're watching. If he wins the midterms, and again, I've told you guys why I don't necessarily think he has to win the midterms to have a successful presidency. I think it's a little bit overrated. I'm not saying it's not important, because it will help speed things up, and the Senate will get a little more MAGA, and so will the House. So he'll have a better Congress at the end of the midterms if we win it. If we lose it, they're going to slow him down with investigations, subpoenas, indictments, so on and so forth. But it'll still be because the Senate, because it's a political cases, because political crimes, the Senate won't convict anybody on any of this. So ultimately, it's just going to be a big stalling effort that I believe could make the 2028 election even more red. And if we win the 2028 election, which I believe thoroughly we will. In fact, I get even more confident about 2028 if the Dems win the midterms. We win the midterms. All right, I'm sorry. If we win 2028, the new census shifts kick in 2030. That's the next midterm election. 2030, the demographic shifts because of people moving to red states. We'll have picked up about 7 seats just from that. You add the end of the Voting Rights Act, which I believe the Supreme Court's going to strike down. That's another 12 to 19 seats. You look at the Republicans coming in with a House that's pretty much set in stone, that cannot go back to blue unless there is significant, and I mean significant, cultural shift back to the left, which, guys, the cultural shift has just started in this country. See, politics is downstream of culture. When culture is in flux, even, or if it's completely gone one way, sometimes somebody in the other party can still squeak through. Just like Trump did in 2016 when our culture was trending more left than it had in a long time, thanks to Obama and the rejection of Bush. And it started really in the Clinton years. So that trend left had continued. Bush was a blip. Obama continued that trend. Trump, blip, but saved it, set the country back on the right path. Biden came in. That's when the trans stuff and everything and all the crazy, the left went full crazy and we hit our apex, but that's also where the mass rejection came in. And this generation of voters, and by that I mean everybody old enough to vote now, all the 18 and ups for the last 5 years, 18 to 65, most of them reject the far left stuff. And they saw it with their own eyes, how crazy it gets. So that cultural shift, because of that, that has only just begun. So regardless if the Democrats win the midterms, our culture is going to keep trending more conservative, more right, more back to that traditional middle that's a little more right-leaning. That's going to be happening now, and these cultural shifts usually go for 20 to 40 years. So that's going to be happening for a while the demographic shift is also here. So if we win the election in 2028, which I thoroughly think we will, I believe after that, it could be red, red, red for 10 to 20 years straight. Actually, not 10 to 20 years. I'm sorry. It'd have to be in fours. 12 to 20 years straight. That means red Republican presidents, a red House. The House is always the hardest to shift back once you get a hold like that. The Democrats had the House for 40 straight years before Newt Gingrich geniusly switched it back to red. But what's interesting is during that time, we mostly had Republican presidents. Very interesting. This is different, though, because the left went so crazy. They're all toxic now. And so, yeah, there might be a Democrat president who sneaks in maybe in 2036 or 2040 after Republicans, MAGA has been in charge for so long that people are tired of it. There might be a Democrat president who slips in. But the odds of the House changing after this demographic shift are very low for a long time. And the odds are that the Senate, because there's so many red states now, will hold as well. So you put all that into place, and then you also consider if there's MAGA president, Senate, that means more Supreme Court justices. That stays red. They keep getting red. So effectively, guys, we are not at the end of a cultural revolution. Trump is not a blip. There's a lot of people out there who say that, and they totally don't understand elections. They totally don't understand trends in America. They don't understand how any of this works. They haven't studied their history. They just have no idea. There's a lot of people out there who think Trump is just a salve. He's only going to, and as long as he's here, once he's gone, it's going far left again. My friends, that is not how this works. Now, I could be wrong. But if I'm wrong, it'd have to be something momentous. Something would have to shift. Something would have to go so bad for the right that people reject it again. But guys, you know what's interesting in all this? One of the things that came out today as well is that right now, the Democrats, despite having the odds to win back the House, they still are less favorable than Republicans. In other words, even though the people are fed up with the Republicans right now and might send them a message by voting Democrat this election for the House, or might not, what a better way to look at it is that the Republicans just don't show up because they're pissed off at the Senate and the House. That's most likely. But when people are asked, do you trust Republicans more or Democrats more? They say Republicans on almost all issues. When they're asked, who do you favor more right now? People say Republicans. And it's not because they love Republicans, because the left is so crazy. And that's in what's supposed to be a blue wave year. So I'm telling you right now, like, we've seen this happen a few times, okay? Republicans had a long stretch, and then FDR came because the Great Depression hit, and the Democrats swept in, and they held that. They held the House, except for one little blip for 2 or 4 years. I can't remember exactly how long it was, but it was one little blip. After FDR, the Democrats held it, lost it for a little blip, and then held it for 40 straight years. That's what we're seeing for MAGA. And I don't even call it Republicans anymore. Republican Party is MAGA. We have some holdovers, but we're weeding them out. We are MAGA. So when you look at all that, friends, that's what our American history and our electoral political history says is coming. Trump is not the end. He's not an aberration. He's the beginning. He saved our country by waking us up and by saving us when the leftists, the globalists, City of London, cabal, deep state, when they were about to take over for good, Trump stopped them. And now he's crushing them. And he's paving the way for this cultural awakening to also have everything it needs to thrive. And you put that all together, you have a powerful future for this MAGA movement. And guys, I'm telling you, I think this is a very strong chance. This is how it's going to go. So do not be dismayed. Do not be discouraged. Do not crash out if we lose the House in the midterms. It's just a blip, because the real trend, this structural trend of Republicans, you can see it in registrations. You can see it in the rejection of leftist policies. You can see it in the trends that the Republicans are still more favorable than Democrats. You can see it all over. That cultural trend is just beginning. And that's a slow moving beast, but it's a powerful moving beast, and it doesn't turn back easy. It does not turn back easy. So be excited, guys. Be excited. This year, whatever happens, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine.